blab of the pave. Let's start with that. Blab of the pave. What's pave?
Street.
Street, short for pavement, I assume, right? Blab? Anna?
Just kind of the babble.
Yeah, babble. Keep going. Anybody else? Blab. I love that word.
It's the talk of the street. Just
Talk of the street, the blab, because of it's a monosyllable, because it's so American in its connotation.
It's vernacular, first of all.
Vernacular. This is really about the sound of the vernacular, this passage.
Which is great, because it's like, in one sense, that's so unpoetic, you know? Like
Unpoetic in
the
a traditional
blab.
sense, yeah.
In a traditional sense, it's very unpoetic, but he's making it poetic.
What's he doing in this whole scene, linguistically or conceptually? What's going on? What's he doing? What's his purpose?
I think he's being innovative in that first he brought the poet out into nature, and that was new, and now he's crafting an urban poetry, which also is
An urban poetry, so cool. An urban poetry. Here we are in the 19th century, in New York, presumably. He loved the crowdedness. He loved to be a flaneur. He loved to be involved, but also standing aside. And what is he doing with this list? Blab of the pave, tires of carts, slough of boot soles, talk of the promenaders, heavy omnibus, the driver with his interrogating thumb. We go many, many instances in a list before we get to a verb. It's a fragment, the driver with his interrogating thumb. Just the very notion of that grammar, what's it suggest? Emily, what do you think?
Well, it seems sort of this attempt for this striving for a kind of frenetic inclusiveness, and by delaying the verb, he's trying to maintain the sense of disorder and chaos, even within the naturally ordered sort of system of a syntactical structure.
There's almost a politics of the verb here. There's almost a critique of the verb and of the subordinated clause. So let's talk about catalogs and democracy, lists and democracy. This supposedly is democratic writing. Okay, so how so? What's it about the catalog and the list? Start us off, Max.
Well, it's inclusive. He's not making, at least not until the end, he doesn't seem to be making a judgment or even telling us what all this information is. It's just sensory detail. It's everything that he can see.
Whatever he can see, he's writing it all down. Or he's listening. Hurrahs of the favorites, fury of the rouse mob.
And he's not going to get it all. It's kind of like impossible to get it all.
But he seems momentarily to have the fantasy that he can get it all. Which, of course, at the very end of our course gets to conceptualists who think that the subject can get out of the way and simply reproduce, as Kenneth Goldsmith does, everything in an issue of the New York Times or in the text we'll be discussing, everything that he says in a week. And his editorial poetic self steps out of the way. Or Jackson McClough, who by chance operations will reproduce a text without the subject intruding at all. This seems to be sort of the beginning of that.
Or at least he's invoking that all of it deserves inclusion, even as if he isn't able to. And there all seem to be maybe like the individual blades of grass. You could even argue it, like the image of it. I don't know if that's taking it too far, but it just seems like
he invites you to take it pretty far. All right, let's just try on the politics of subordinated clauses and of cause and effect clauses. This is pretty hard to do. Anybody want to give it a try?
Well, I mean, you can look at, like, if you just take the whole poem and then look at the line, what howls restrained by decorum? You know, restraining it by decorum could sort of imply that kind of like pushing against form that he's doing.
Absolutely. That is definitely a metapoetic statement. But let's talk about the subordinated clause. You can't look at the poem because there aren't any here. When someone subordinates a clause, what are they implying?
But that clause is sort of subtractable, and it's unnecessary.
It's grammatically unnecessary. You can take it out and the sentence still does its main work. And so whatever's in the subordinated clause is subordinate, is not as important.
But
the same
all of this
with
is important.
everything here is equally important, and he does not make the decision for you as to what to pay attention to. This is a crowd scene, and it is confusing because urban life is confusing, and he allows the confusion to stand without organizing it for you, without subjectivizing it, without subordinating anything to anything else. So the eye and the ear don't know what to do. You are modern, you are watching, you are in the thick of it. And I mind them, he says. I come and I depart. The subject position seems to be, I mind them. There's a verb. I mind them. He almost takes the noun sense of mind, as in the brain. I brain them. I mind them. Or the show or resonance of them. Resonance has a kind of oral quality. I come and I depart. He's in the scene, he's out of the scene. Let's skip to section 14. A quick passage here. What is commonest, cheapest, nearest, easiest is me, capital M. These are not words that are usually positive. Common, you common person, you. Cheapest, easiest. Nearest is interesting too. What does any of this mean? Tell us about Walt. Max, the subject, the writer, the I of Song of Myself. Tell us about it.
He's saying here that the common denominator is the self, that what is most common, what is most accessible is well, at least for him, it's me, it's him.
Anybody else? What do you think of this person? What is this person? Amaris?
Maybe he's just referencing the physical experience in itself. Physicality is what is common, universal, and that might seem the most indecent or basest experiences.
Why celebrate cheapness?
Because it's a bit accessible.
Democratic, free. Why easiest? This is weird because we just celebrated the difficulty and complexity and open-endedness of Emily Dickinson's poetry. Now, it's okay to like different modes, but easiest? What does he mean by easiest?
Accessible. I mean, he wants this poem to be something that everyone can read and understand.
What I assume, you shall assume. And if you do grok each other that way, it's implicitly, ipso facto easy.
And
Kristen?
also,
I'm sorry.
having something be easy, it allows it to be more spontaneous because you don't have to worry about some process that kind of enforces the difficulty. So there might be more potential for joy through.
There's joy and ease. Kristen?
It's also like a bodily easiness, as Amaris was saying. It's more of a base physical. I'm easy sexually.
Sexually, easy, I'm easy. I think that was a song once from a film in Nashville. None of you saw that, but I did. I'm easy. If you just go up to the stanza preceding, I am enamored of growing outdoors. Well, we know that. He wants to get out of the perfumed rooms. Of men, and you're really interested in men here, men who live outdoors, men who are essentially like the beats, who travel like hobos across the country, fast, of men that live among cattle, or taste of the ocean or woods, of the builders and steerers of ships, and the wielders of axes and mauls, and the drivers of horses. I can eat and sleep with them week in and week out. I'm easy. This is the way in which his omnivorous sexual longing and love, it's not just homosexuality, it's kind of omnisexuality, or bisexuality, whatever it is, the idea that he is, the sort of queer Walt is easy, accessible. He's basically, it's self-abnegation to the point where he loves everyone and is accessible to everyone. And that becomes an aesthetic. So we go to section 47, and we get to another favorite passage of mine. Again, I think it's a meta-pedagogical moment in this poem, Song of Myself. I am the teacher of athletes. He that by me spreads a wider breast than my own proves the width of my own. He most honors my style, who learns under it to destroy the teacher. What are we going to do with that? Dave, have you thought about this?
I think he's saying that I, as the teacher, am only as good and successful as my students.
And that's a nice notion of teaching. Again, not the traditional, I speak, you listen lecturing thing, this is the one who says that if my knowledge enables you, then I'm better, successful. Okay, that's nice, very progressive notion of teaching. I am the teacher of athletes. He that by me spreads a wider breast than my own proves the width of my own. Is this an analogy to the reader, really? What's going on? Who's he teaching? And what does he mean by honors my style? Anna, your thought?
I think that if he's, and I think he is doing this, but he's really breaking up form. And if people later on, like let's say the Beats, or let's say William Carlos Williams, take this and expand it even more and do even greater things with it, then Walt can say, like, yes, like I was successful here. Like by breaking up form, I opened up possibilities to do even more with poetry.
And Kristen, what could he possibly mean by destroy the teacher?
Well, it's kind of,
It's a little agonistic and brutal. Isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, it's very aggressive, and it's kind of undermining the self when in the beginning he was singing himself. It's a bit of a flip there.
A bit of a flip.
It's him
Max?
reckoning with the paradoxical nature of the poem, calling, sort of asking or commanding that people not follow what's in books or not follow commands.
And yet, if we honor his style, in Leaves of Grass, the leaves being the page, we will be deriving our style from his, and we will have been taught somewhat in a conventional way by him.
Also, that destruction of the teacher, I think, indicates this kind of, going back to the kind of the keyword organic or original. It kind of points to like the circle of life notion and the impermanence of himself. So we get to that at the very end of the poem, when he is look for me under your boot soles. He is that kind of decomposed material.
He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's the Sandman. He's Zelig. He's in the air that we breathe. I teach straying. What's that?
Makes you want
Makes you want to hold your breath. All right. I teach straying from me. I love this, and in fact, it resonates surprisingly well with the Emily Dickinson who allows the mind, the brain to go in some direction. I teach straying from me, he says in the middle of section 47. Yet who can stray from me? First of all, I teach straying from me. I teach digression. I teach freedom. I teach, and he's got to ironize the notion of teaching, I teach digression. I teach freedom. I teach breaking rules. But who can stray from me? I mean, it's hegemonic. It's impossible to stray from straying. I follow you, whoever you are, from the present hour, from here, in the sense we meant earlier. My words itch at your ears till you understand them. Kristen?
Well,
What do we do with
now
this?
it's like he's ubiquitous.
He's
And
in
it's
your
kind
ear.
of what Ali
He's
was
talking
saying.
to you.
He's going to be with you forever. He's
impossible
laying
to
the
stray from him.
seed for his grass.
Straying is very powerful. In the same sense that Emily meant when she talked about the flood of the brain. Straying is the most powerful thing that we can do. Letting the mind go freely where it wants to go. And that will never leave you once it's been open. Modernism comes from this, and we can never go back. There's no such thing anymore as unconscious pre-modernism. When someone chooses to write a traditional poem after modernism, they have to be conscious of the fact that they're writing a traditional poem after an era in which the traditional poem was called into question. There is no going back. It's a Pandora's box. And finally, section 52, which I would like to read it in its entirety and invite you to comment on. Someone, Amaris, talk about, I sound my barbaric yacht over the roofs of the world. Not sure what you'll say about that other than, wow, that's a great line. Dave, I depart as air, I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. Kristen, I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. And Allie, you will hardly know who I am or what I mean. And Anna, missing me one place, search another, I stop somewhere waiting for you. Here it is, 52. The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab. and my loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. The last scud of day holds back for me. It flings my likeness after the rest, and true as any on the shadowed wilds, it coaxes me to the vapor and the dusk. I depart as air, I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. I effuse my flashing eddies and drifted in lacy jags. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you. Beautiful. I can't believe I didn't assign the hawk coming by. But really what's happening there is the hawk is doing its complaining, and the hawk is complaining about his his aesthetic, which is hilariously ironic because he's very whack-like in his own. Okay, so I sound my barbaric yawp. Who had that? Amaris?
I interpret it to be that he is giving in to this wild, impulsive, sort of primitive inner urge, and he's not giving in to any sort of cultural refinement that might be synonymous with conformity.
Thus barbaric.
And it's a sort of a rallying call, because we never find a word like yawp in Dickinson's poems, for example. It's definitely a celebration of the individual voice, no matter how.
And also the voice published, shouted
right,
from the
standing
rooftop.
out from the crowd.
From the rooftop, a declaration. Who's got I depart as air? I think Dave does. You don't have white locks, but shake your locks.
It's funny.
You don't want to do that.
I don't want to shake my locks. He's, in a sense, leaving the physical world and becoming one with nature, and much of the poem is about celebrating nature. And here he's, in one sense, departing as air, but he's shaking his locks too. So he's trying to be physical and non-physical at the same time.
So he's feeling rather free. He's also leaving the scene. He departs as air. So air, of course, is breathing. It's the poetic core. It's inspiration, like respiration. It's invention. And so he departs as air. He's in the air we breathe. He's everywhere. He's ubiquitous. And there's that freedom in shaking his locks in it. I bequeath myself to the dirt. This is the legacy. Who's got this?
I do.
Kristen.
Yeah, so I bequeath myself to the dirt. It's kind of an ashes to ashes, dust to dust image. And with bequeath, it's really like he's giving himself up for us. It's kind of like godly.
And
Jesus.
Christ-like, maybe.
Christ-like,
Yeah.
definitely. And
wherever you want me, I'll be there.
Yeah, and you just have to look for him in the dirt.
Under your boot soles,
Yeah.
you're walking on me on the firmament.
And
on
also
grass.
under the grass is the book,
And
so the
common.
leaves of grass are here. It's, even though he's saying that you shouldn't look to things that have been written in the past, it's kind of paradoxical.
He's saying you should read this book whenever you want to find
Yeah.
me. And he's still there. Walt's still there. He has a powerful effect on us. We're all kind of in his sway, maybe except for Anna right now. No, you are in his sway. He's whispering in your ear. You will hardly know who I am and what I mean. Who's got that?
That's me. I think of this as being a very transcendental line, because it's kind of him saying, like, I will remain a mystery, but that doesn't really matter, because as long as you feel it, it doesn't matter if you know what I am or who I am or what I mean.
The meaning that I am is that you will have to invest yourself in my subject position in order to know meaning.
And
that's the meaning.
And that the search for meaning is the meaning.
The search for meaning is the meaning. It's very cool and self-referential and really joins Dickinson in that respect. And finally, is it Anna? Mm-hmm. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you. It's a wonderful ending.
It's an amazing ending. I mean, I think what makes this poem so successful, and like we've been talking about how kind of like paradoxical it is, but like he's okay with the paradox. He's into the paradox. He wants there to be paradox, because life is not straightforward, the world is not straightforward, civilization is not straightforward, so you have to embrace the paradox and be okay with it. And I think this ending is kind of all about that. You know, if you don't understand one thing, keep going and you'll find another. And if you don't respond to one thing, keep going, you'll respond to another.
Nice.
I stopped somewhere waiting for you. You know, he's got it all figured out.
He's really,
like,
but he's also generous. He's saying, you know that notion of the relationship between author and authority, which is sort of hits its peak in the 19th century, in the omniscient novelists, the Dickens, the Tolstoy, the George Eliot, that kind of omniscience, starting from the 18th century in the novel tradition. And here we have a poet who, standing against that tradition in a way, is saying, yeah, I've got all that confidence and ego, but really what I'm about is enabling you. I'm about being there. When you need me, I'll be there. There's a certain self-abnegation and generosity of spirit that's just underneath the egotism in Walt Whitman.